Hello, and welcome to what we are officially going to call episode 1 of the Footy A to Z podcast. We've tried this and failed at it a few times before, but this time we're committing to a run of podcasts. This is episode 1. Zach, you excited about it?
Yes, I am excited. We were just making the joke before that the best time to start a season-long podcast is round 1, which was the original plan, but the second best time is now. So here we are at round 5. Recording Match of the Week podcast, episode 1. Tell us what the idea is and what we're going to be doing on this.
Yeah, so the idea behind this podcast, like you said, was originally going to start in round 1, but starting now in round 5, we're going to loosely structure it around a deep dive into one game every week. So we'll have this kind of introductory segment. We'll talk a bit about what's going on in the footy world before launching into a game. Doing a bit of a deep dive and analysis of, why we thought the team that won, what worked, what didn't work for each team, and then kind of maybe try and ground it, especially as the season goes on a bit more, into the context of how those teams are going so far this year. So we sat down in round 1. We watched Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs.
For the second time in a row.
We were very excited. We watched lots of detailed notes. We wrote lots of detailed notes, I should say. And then life happened and we never got around to recording.
No.
But we're at it again for this week. But before we get on to this week's game, I don't want to let that be a complete waste of time. So what was your very quick takeaway from round 1, Melbourne versus the Western Bulldogs? Did you like having the grand final rematch open the season?
I didn't. And maybe it's the Richmond supporter in me being a little bit cut that we couldn't open the season with Carlton. But yeah, just from a pure football perspective, I think the feeling was that it felt rushed on the Wednesday. It was like Thursday's that good balance of you're building anticipation all week, but you don't have to wait all the way till Friday. Wednesday it was like, oh my God, it's 7 o'clock and I'm not home yet and the footy's starting. And I think we watched the game even a little bit delayed anyway. But from the grand final replay perspective as well, just mix it up a little bit. Let the anticipation build. If you want the grand final rematch to be a big thing, then just pick it for a different round and just start making it a thing now.
Build towards
felt a little bit forced round 1.
Yeah. It didn't help that it was almost exactly the same game as the grand final as well.
What was it? Melbourne started well. The Western Bulldogs got in front. And then Melbourne came back and just won the game fairly convincingly in the end. With midfield dominance and strong clearance and spread around the stoppage. So, anyways, that's not the game we're actually here to talk about. We were going to talk about Collingwood and Brisbane, which we just watched last night. But before we jump into that, we did want to give a quick update on our Patreon tipping comp. So, as some of you may know, our patrons, who are our beautiful supporters of the channel, are competing against each other for the prize to pick a video topic for us to make. If you haven't seen it, Patrick picked the topic this year after winning last year's comp, and that was on Essendon and their road in and out of the saga.
Good topic.
Yeah, good topic, and thanks for your help on that, Patrick. North, not the club, the person, a good friend of the channel and patron is leading the comp in front of us. And then in third is Paulie the Octopus. Tell us about the Octopus.
Yeah, so the Octopus is basically, I think Zach and I in the past have discussed that sometimes footy tipping feels more like luck than strategy. So inspired by the famous Paul the Octopus, who predicted the FIFA World Cup results a few years ago, we've created our own fictional octopus to tip every game before the season actually starts. And currently doing very well up in third place. So we're going to have to figure out what we do if the octopus wins, because it just invalidates all footy tipping contests here on after, I think.
Yeah, I think just disband footy tipping altogether as a result. Yeah, and that's on margin as well. So it's North 25, us 24, and the Octopus 24. But the Octopus isn't so good at picking margins. It's one pitfall.
Do we have an indication from North, an early indication about what he might like his video topic to be?
Yeah, well, North is a big Saints fan, who I actually know personally. and he's earmarked from a pretty early date that he's keen to know all about Jack Steele, and these are his words. Why Jack Steele is the best player in the AFL.
Well, he started the season brilliantly again this year, so not the most outlandish claim in the world.
Yeah. So I'm not sure we'll go down that exact route, but something about Jack Steele is on the cards at the moment.
Great. All right. Well, if you're a Saints fan, get around north and hope he continues this charge. And of course, big thank you to all our patrons on Patreon. We're very much appreciative of your support. If you do want to support us, help us do some, hopefully more of these podcasts and get some more of those animated videos out. It's the best way you can support the channel. The second best way you can support the channel, of course, like, subscribe and share the videos with your friends. And that also means the world to us.
Absolutely.
As well.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's kind of us stumbling through the intro by now. And,
we've done better than we normally do, I think, to be honest. If you're new here, we do this thing from time to time. Every now and then we decide it's a good idea for us to sit in front of a camera. We've had some mixed results. Yeah, some of them have gone all right. Some of them have been train wrecks. But hopefully this season, if we can do this almost every round, hopefully every round, knock on the table. If we can do this regularly, we'll hopefully get better at it. And we're really keen on your feedback as to how it all goes as well.
Yeah. Alrighty.
But yeah, should we press on to Collingwood Brisbane?
Yeah, so it was...
Which turned out to be a really interesting game.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely exceeded expectations, I'd say, with Brisbane 15-8, 98 defeating Collingwood 14-7, 91. Collingwood kind of just rocked up to play, which made it an exciting game.
Yeah, I've been really impressed. Really impressed by the Pies so far this year. And we were kind of having a bit of a chat just about the season in general before we started recording, about how, with the exception, I think, of Melbourne looking really good and Brisbane now starting to look really good, you kind of have no idea where any other team's going to finish.
Yeah.
So far, and Collingwood definitely fall into that category.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably chuck Geelong into the top 4 category again. Definitely going to be thereabouts. But that 4 till 10... even 12 range is wide open. Yeah, really there for the taking. And I don't think we're really going to know what that's going to start to look like for another 5 rounds still, even. A lot of teams that are hard to read. But Collingwood coming out strong. They were really good out of the middle in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. Playing with kind of brave direct ball movement, taking it on. And they did skip out to an early lead. I'm not sure what your opinion was, but it felt like they could have been further in front as well to open the match.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we'll probably talk about this a lot over the next course of this podcast, because it was one of the main themes, but they moved the ball forward really well and then looked a little bit like they were lacking that finish in the forward line.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, structurally, they went with Kruger and Cox as the main tools. Myercheck was out, of course, who I think he was their leading goal kicker coming into the match.
No Jamie Elliott in the side either.
No Jamie Elliott, and Ginnivan, who was their second leading goal kicker, was also out. And then they also dropped Henry, who I think was third coming into the game. So a very young, inexperienced forward line who haven't really played a lot with each other. A bit of a shining light, though, was Reef McInnes, number 26 for the Pies.
Yeah, I thought McInnes started really well. I mean, I personally spent the first 5 minutes of the game getting him confused with both Dacos brothers. I didn't really know what was going on. And then got him confused with Finn McGuinness, who plays for Hawthorn as well. But once I finally figured out who he was, I was quite impressed by what I saw from Reef McInnes. From Reef McInnes.
Yes.
Yeah, it looked really good, really lively. Of course, when you said Collingwood maybe could have been further in front, he missed a couple of goals that maybe could have given them that lead, but otherwise was really lively.
Yeah, and I think that was confidence for him, and it would come as well, because a couple of easy shots from not very difficult angles, but he kicked a really nice one from a bit further out towards the end of the match. So excited to see what he can kind of grow into, and really fits that exciting kind of hybrid mold of the athletic 190-ish centimetre kind of mid-sized forward who just does a little bit of everything.
He almost reminds me a bit of Will Hosking-Elliott as well. athletic, can lead up at the ball, but can also crumb. Nice finisher when he got going, he finished a nice sort of crumbing goal. So yeah, with that confidence, can definitely see a lot more to come from him. Nathan Kruger was another one that the Pies went with. What did you make of his game?
Yeah, like he definitely threw the body around, but him and Cox probably both just kind of lacking that just kind of natural lead up ability that we really saw out of Danaher and McStay for the Lions. It was just like a pretty direct comparison that when you think about Collingwood not quite being clinical, like they had more inside 50s, I think, 54 to 62 in their favour than Brisbane did, but the Lions just played a good lead-up game. Charlie Cameron even getting hit up on the lead. And they just weren't quite straightened up by someone like Myercheck, who like they had been in previous weeks.
So both teams, and I think this is one of the reasons why this was such a great game to watch. It wasn't always great from a skills perspective. There were parts of the game where it did become a little bit scrappy, but throughout that, both teams very willing to take the game on and go through the corridor and attack directly. Craig McRae has got Collingwood playing in a very aggressive attacking way, which is great to see. And of course, we know the Lions have been one of the most exciting direct teams in the competition for the last few years, scoring very, very highly. So both teams trying to do a very similar thing, and it was just that finishing, that final kick inside 50 where you had blokes like Danaher, even Jared Berry a few times just leading straight at the footy, and able to take those grabs, whereas Collingwood maybe looked like they were searching for a target a bit more a few times.
And I think a bit of a lesson in patience from the Lions as well. Like Collingwood in the opening rounds of the season have kind of really been criticised for just blazing away at times, and it's all well and good to play exciting football and get the ball moving forward, but like when an easy option is on, like still being willing to take it, just because it's not necessarily the way you want to play. It's just like better ball movement, and Brisbane were really willing to kind of be a bit more patient from half back to half forward, and that probably lent to them being able to manufacture better chances as well, despite Collingwood's defence actually playing quite well.
Yeah, I think we both remarked that we thought Howe and Moore both had quite good games, but we also thought Danaher had quite a good game. And that's one of those weird things that can happen in a game of footy sometimes, where both the key backs and the key forwards play well, especially in modern footy where it's not that one-on-one battle the whole game. You get more of a chance, to impact as an intercept defender, even if the key forward gets away from you. Maybe you're not playing on him all the time, so it doesn't reflect as badly on you. Of course, the Pies threw Darcy Moore forward late, maybe to try and straighten them up a little bit more, and get that scoring presence up forward.
And if you do have to do that, then like that's probably just another sign that Cox and Kruger are maybe not the most cohesive duo. If when the game is on the line and there to be won, that you go with Darcy Moore instead. Yeah.
So just to round it off, we had 4 goals for Danaher, but Howe still took 9 marks. Darcy Moore still took 7 marks. A really interesting battle to watch that up forward, and one that was quite entertaining. Danaher, of course, 4 goals won, so making the most of his opportunities, which was great to see from him as well. It's just great to have a fit Joe Danaher jumping at the ball in the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. Just looks good from outside 50, unwinding that long leg, and just great to see him playing footy, as you said. One thing that we noticed a lot for both teams, and it has been a theme throughout the entire year that I really wanted to kind of take the time to discuss, is not the word stand, but the 2 words outside 5.
Yes.
So what is outside 5, and why do we keep hearing it so much?
Yeah, it's a weird one. Everyone complained about constantly hearing stand in their microphones last year, and it's changed to outside 5. The idea here basically is, that protected area that we've all come to know and love over the course of the last few years, extends 5 meters around the mark. So if you don't want to stand the mark, you can stand 5 meters away from the mark.
And move.
And move is the critical thing. So we're seeing teams do this mostly in their back half, where rather than, and if a mark's taken out wide, the idea of the stand rule is that that player gets sucked to the mark, it opens up the 45-degree angle kick behind them, or it opens up space for a player running past, who they can then feed the handball to. Something, we've talked about a lot, both in our Did the Stand Rule Work video and our original breakdown of when that rule was introduced. If you want to go have a look at those for a bit more of a discussion on, why the stand rule is supposed to do what it supposed to, increase scoring and increase the flow of the game. So what we're seeing teams do now is abandon the mark, stand 5 meters away from it inside the corridor, and you can now move to block that short chip inside or move to block the runner coming past. And it's having a really interesting effect. Because it does obviously counteract a lot of those things that the stand rule was brought in to do. But at the same time, retreating 5 meters back gives the bloke with the ball a bit more time to make a decision. And a bit more space to do that as well. So it can still continue to open up the game a little bit as well. It does make the stand rule maybe start to look a little bit silly.
Yeah, it's just really quite undermining it. I think the team is saying the worst thing that can possibly happen, which is kind of counterintuitive to perhaps what footy fans want to see, is that the ball is moving quickly into their defence.
Yeah.
So it's really about, we might be giving the current ball carrier a kick under less pressure, but it's better to delay that kick from happening, get the defence set up, than it is for them to be able to just shoot a handball off to someone flying past. And there you go into the back line before you've got your zone set up. Can you imagine anything worse?
It really, it's almost maybe a bit of a safety thing as well. I mean, we saw a couple in the Richmond Bulldogs game last week. I think it was Aaron Norton, but I could be wrong, where a player, would run past the mark to receive that handball, and he would just instinctively take that step towards it.
Yes.
And give away the stand rule 50. And that 50 is such a harsh penalty, when it takes a player from on the wing to inside 50 and a shot at goal potentially. So it could be that teams have also identified that it's less risky to stand 5 meters away than it is to stand on the mark and not give that penalty away.
Yeah. And I think it was Dion Prestia absolutely dummied one. I can imagine the exact scenario. And it's happened a lot, and players keep trying to do it. Once you learn an easy way to get 50, why wouldn't you just keep trying to do it? And that's probably just another criticism of the rule in the end, that's something that it has become a problem. That's probably kind of enough about mostly Collingwood. What did you make of Brisbane? What kind of what started badly for them? Why were they behind?
It's kind of hard to put your finger on it. I think Steele Sidebottom started the game really well, and was able to kind of get that space and overlap out wide for Collingwood. It took maybe Lachie Neale a bit of time to work himself into the game too. Obviously, Pendlebury went to him early and looked to shut him down around stoppages, which is possibly not a matchup that he was expecting. But one that footy fans would have loved, I think. But he was definitely able to work himself into the game a bit more as time went on and started giving them a lot more drive going forward, I thought.
Yeah, I think they absolutely would have taken Neale's output in the first quarter until he went and kind of kicked a goal to steady Brisbane a little bit. And he didn't really look back from there. I thought the Lions players were actually quite good at helping him as well, like straight away from the first quarter. And, it's easy to be critical of teams who just let the tagged player just kind of suffer.
Yeah.
And while that might be an unselfish strategy to let other players off the chain, McCluggage was straight into Pendlebury. He'd try and man him, disrupt Collingwood's structure a little bit, and just create a little bit of chaos that Neale could kind of escape into and just do what he does, collect the ball and distribute it.
Yeah.
Brisbane getting on top in the midfield as well probably leads to those higher class forward entries.
Yeah.
I think it was 13 Brisbane to 8 Collingwood marks inside 50s, despite Collingwood having a lot more inside 50s. So yeah, just ahead of the ball, getting out in space and the midfield working really well to provide good options for the forwards.
Definitely. And that midfield group, I think, of Brisbane, and kind of like you're saying, with McCluggage going to Pendlebury, seemed to have developed a way to really support each other. And if one of them doesn't fire well, Lions, as an example, maybe didn't have the most impactful game that he's ever had, but they didn't need him to because Neil was firing, Zorko was firing, McCluggage himself still managed to find plenty of the ball and have a really good impact.
Yeah, and Lions with what Luke Hodge called a very rare chase down tackle on Scott Pendlebury himself as well. So maybe a photo of that going up in the pool room for Jared Lyons. But despite Collingwood kind of starting strong and going out to that lead and the game only finishing with a 7-point deficit, Brisbane really kind of managed the game quite well once they established that 20-point lead and seemed like they were just good at keeping the Pies at arm's length.
Yeah. The last quarter, it felt like Brisbane had it under control and they knew what they were doing. I think, Collingwood got those 2 goals. I think they kicked the last 2 goals in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game. And, even though it got back to a 2-goal, the last one kicked right on the final siren. So even though it was back to a 2-goal and then a 1-goal game, it never really felt like Collingwood were charging towards a comeback.
And also like it was just anytime Collingwood seemed to have a chance and it was like, all right, this is going to be the play that gets them back into the game, it just wouldn't quite work out. Another Darcy Moore one that just didn't quite get to him and just kind of fumbled over the line. And yeah, it was just a pretty strong performance from Brisbane, who really looked to be cementing themselves as a top 4 side again in 2022.
I think it was good to see from the Lions perspective as well, as a team that's now been on the rise for several years, has made a few prelims but hasn't managed to break through. There's been a lot of hype around them during this time. Lots of great young talent. This really felt like a performance from a mature team. I think once they got in front, they held that 20-point buffer pretty much until the last 2 minutes of the game when they knew that it was won anyway. So that maturity just to be able to grind out a win against a team like Collingwood, who've been playing some really good footy so far this year, and have these really hungry young players in the side who would desperately want to win as well. Obviously, one of those goals kicked right at the end of the game as well was Jordan De Goey with a beautiful banana from the boundary line. Again, from an outside 5 kind of thing, with the Lions manning the mark on the inside rather than standing right on the boundary line. But what did you make of De Goey's game? 4 goals, 20 possessions. Is this...
Did he kick 4 in the end?
He kicked 4 in the end, yeah. Is this what we should be expecting from Jordan De Goey week to week?
I think it has to be, and I think that's the role that he has to play for Collingwood. Like, I think Nick Dacos started the game really well, but probably went out of it for a little bit. So if you're looking at Collingwood's midfield, and yes, you've got Pendlebury, who's just perpetually consistent, but he gets a year older every 365 days, as we all do. But like,
funny that
De Goey really has to be that kind of number 1 player in the midfield, and he's taken that role pretty well to start the year. Obviously, had some off-field drama over the pre-season, but seems to have bounced back and really has his head down, working hard for the club.
I'd almost challenge you on that and say it's not necessarily that he needs to be the number 1 player in the midfield all the time, but he's definitely the person who can go into that midfield and really be impactful, I think. We didn't see him play huge midfield minutes, but he had a few centre clearances when he went in there. Put on a few big hip and shoulders when he got up the ground and got them moving forward. So I think if he can pick and choose his moments and be impactful when he's in there, and then still press forward and get his 4 goals. Again, another one where this game was kind of weird in that lots of things happened. I think, one of those goals came late. One of them was from a 50-metre penalty. So maybe it didn't feel quite like a dominant 4-goal performance, but he still definitely did his best to keep himself in the match throughout the whole match, which is one thing we've seen from De Goey before. He pops up for moments here and there. But a bit more of a consistent performance.
Another thing we should discuss is Gardner's bump on Nick Dacos as well. Mm-hmm. I thought it was pretty terrible, basically.
Yeah, not a good look. Gardner got stuck in a fair bit I think, throughout this game.
Yeah.
I was kind of starting with that incident. Obviously, the Collingwood players rightfully were not happy with it. And he had a few other little altercations throughout the match. But I think what it did show was that Gardner and Andrews as a pair were not willing to give up any sort of cheap goals or cheap possessions to those Collingwood forwards. And almost that bit of, that edge coming into their game shows how I think this Lions team is really evolving into a bit more of a fierce competitive team. Guys like Mitch Robinson and Dane Zorko, of course, have always been kind of flying the flag in that kind of way. But yeah, it really felt like the Lions were not going to be bullied on their home ground and were really out to make Collingwood earn every goal and every possession. Yeah,
absolutely. I think like good sides have to have an element of that. I guess it is kind of just aggression a little bit and, the confidence to just throw your body around a little bit. But I just don't think that that's necessarily the way that we want to see that kind of thing.
No, definitely
kind of servicing
Obviously,
in
we
the
don't
game.
condone a bloke getting flattened as he's going back with the flight.
No.
Right after his mark.
And yeah, I think the ball looked like it was in Dacos's hands before Gardner even chose to jump and start the bump. So yeah, won't be surprised at all if he gets weeks and or a week at least. And I think he deserves it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I heard a couple of people comparing it to when Mason Cox came flying in with his knees, and how's that any less dangerous?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts on that? I'm not entirely sure. I think Mason Cox is just a bit of a clumsy guy.
I think it's the intent is the issue. Where Cox is big, he's jumping, he's a bit ungainly, and sure his knees are going to fly around a bit, but I don't think he was actively looking to take anyone out, whereas Gardner has lined someone up from 20 metres away, had plenty of time to pull out, and despite all that, just decided to go straight through him.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction. Cool. That's probably all I really have to say about the game from a tactical point of view. Enjoyed it. Would watch again. Brisbane and Collingwood, maybe we'll discuss you in another future week. We've just realised as well, before we do wrap up, we should just make mention of Jack Crisp as well, because
our All-Australian by the stats captain.
Yes.
So we have big raps on him, and we love to see him do well.
That was in the back line, though, and he's now venturing into the midfield a bit more. So when we were saying, or I was saying at least, that De Goey kind of has to take that number one midfielder mantle, maybe he doesn't because of how well Jack Crisp is playing. Or is it 35 disposals or something in the end?
Yeah, and Crisp is an interesting one because obviously he has kind of alternated between that rebounding backman versus midfield position. But looked really good at times bursting through the centre of the ground and really gives Collingwood some good run, I think, when he gets higher up. So it'll be really interesting to keep an eye on him and see how he's used, especially as Craig McRae looks to be playing a more sort of run and carry, aggressive attacking style. Jack Crisp, could be a really good weapon for him.
Yeah, just doesn't necessarily have to play any differently, but just do it a little bit higher up the ground and send the ball forward. Even possibly Quaynar's development as well, kind of doing similar things to what Crisp was doing down back in the previous couple of years. He's coming along really well. But yeah.
It was also interesting to see. I know we talked a bit about McGuinness at the start, but the small forwards from Brisbane's perspective were really interesting in this game as well. A very quick shout out to Zach Bailey, who I thought had a really good game with 3 goals. Charlie Cameron obviously a bit quiet, only the 1 goal for him. Still, impacted, lots of pressure and that kind of thing at ground level, but Bailey was able to pop up and be a leading option at times for the Lions as well. So I think to have both of them working really well in that forward line and working off Danaher and McStay, showed how dangerous the Lions can be when they get that quick ball movement going.
Yeah, and lots of question marks on that Lions forward line with Eric Hipwood going down at the start of the year too. So overall impressed with how they've kind of pulled that together.
Danaher almost staying a bit deeper looks good for them, whereas McStay took a lot of marks around half forward and looked to be more of that outlet kick for them. One of those ones where it's, you lose a key player and you have to adapt almost, and it can have that effect of bringing up some of the other players in the team.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I reckon that's match of the week, round 5, episode 1.
Yes.
Probably wrapped up from an analysis point of view.
Yeah, a really interesting match. Lions look great once again, and Collingwood continue to impress and surprise this season. I think the main takeaways from that.
Yeah. Keep an eye out next week. As we said, we are going to be doing the Giants and St Kilda on Friday night. So catch the game if you want to get involved with the discussion. Leave a comment on what you thought of this podcast, taking suggestions, and keen to kind of gauge if everyone is keen to see more of this. We're gonna throw some at you regardless whether you want it or not. But always keen to hear your voice as well. And keep an eye out for the opportunity to vote on what game we do. So weeks where our schedule is looking a little bit more flexible and we can kind of juggle around with a couple of games and we're not sure which one to choose, that's where you'll come in, and that could appear either as a poll just for our patrons to give them a little treat and a thank you, or also just to appear as a community post here on YouTube.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do a little bit of both of those things as the season goes on. And we will endeavour to spread these out amongst the teams as much as we possibly can too.
Awesome.
Great.
Otherwise, in case you forgot, I have been Zach, and this has been Andreas.
Hello.
And thanks for watching. Bye.
See ya.